Genesis House and the Friends in Recovery podcast are proud to bring you Answering the Call, the First Responder podcast. Join your host, Mike the Podfather, and Jersey Ed as they address the real issues in health and wellness for first responders, from physical and mental health to relationships and work-life balance. We leave no stone unturned. Answering the Call, the First Responder podcast is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your friends in recovery answering the call.
Hey, welcome everybody. Friends in Recovery answering the call. I'm Mike the Podfather.
And I'm Jersey Ed.
And we have our producer extraordinaire.
Yes.
Sweets.
I'm here with you
What's
guys.
up, Sweets?
Sweets, good to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, good to be here, Ed.
Good. Yeah, absolutely, Mike. We're taking on a new endeavor, I guess.
I like this new endeavor.
I know.
Hey, anything we can do to help anybody that's doing any type of work in law enforcement, firefighting, any type of work.
Any first responders out there who are listening, we're here to help. The show is going to be a little bit about everything, from divorce to substance abuse to mental health, that hard subject, suicide, that's ravaging the community of our first responders now.
It's an epidemic right now. In Massachusetts right now, the highest number of deaths for police officers, correctional officers is higher than it's ever been. It's really been considered an epidemic.
Yeah, it's sad. It's tough. So we're going to touch on all those and more. There's financial, even eating habits. I'm sure, Mike, you were a cop, and your eating habits probably weren't the greatest when you're on the road. So
since I've been retired, I've lost 32 pounds. And I people look at me and they say, "Have you been sick?" I said, "No, I just actually eat healthy now."
Just retired.
I eat healthy, and I'm really watching what I'm doing. I'm 65 years old. I want to live to be 85.
Absolutely.
The average life expectancy of a white police officer, firefighter, or EMS worker is 59 years old.
Ugh.
And those statistics don't come from me, Jersey. They come from the Department of Justice, the DOJ, and the FBI, which is really sinful.
Yeah, it's a tough career, and we applaud all you guys out there. You too, Mike, for doing what you guys do for us. And we can't forget about the armed services either. The veterans. You were a veteran too, and
absolutely.
So that's going to be included in this show. We're going to talk all about that. So
right. And there you go again with the high number of suicides. Combat veterans. It's staggering, and it shouldn't be going on. We have politicians now that are fighting over stuff that is so irrelevant.
Yeah.
There's so much. 1%, actually, right now, less than 1% of males join the armed services in this country. 1%. Think of that. And this 1%, they're dying at a rate of 35 a day. 35 suicides a day, armed services. Again, stats from the DOJ.
Yeah, it's
in the
tough.
armed forces.
These young kids get into the armed forces, and then they get, I don't want to say brainwashed, but, Uncle Sam builds them up the way they want. And then when they get released from active duty, there's no help for these guys. I mean, there is a VA hospital, there's all that, but that, I don't know. I heard horror stories about VA hospitals.
Well, I'll tell you, I have a very close friend, actually a relative, who's spent many days in the armed services. He was a pilot during the Vietnam War, and he flew tankers, and he fueled jets. Smart kid. Think of that. Think of the nerves of steel it takes to be flying at 500 miles an hour and fueling jets. And he got out of the service, and a short time later he ended up with having some serious mental health issues. Yeah. He's almost 70 years old, so he's been having these for 50 years.
Yeah, it's not easy. So we're going to touch on all kinds of topics. And the other thing, too, Mike, is that we want to make sure that you guys are involved with it. You, the audience, you listening, call us, email us, let us know what the topics that you want to, listen to. We need speakers. We'll have cops in here. We'll have firefighters in here. We'll have a little bit of everybody. I was talking to Mike before we went on. Just before that, we can pick a cop off the street and talk to him. This is a firefighter or an EMS. There's always something going on in this field that they need help some way, some form or another. Divorce rates are huge amongst
the roof.
Yeah, amongst correctional officers. You were a correctional officer, right?
Yep.
And you know those. You remember those days.
Number one in the country right now. Divorce rates and suicide. Police officers are number two. They used to be number one. Correctional officers are number one.
They're number one now.
The studies they do. The latest study was done in 2017 by the Department of Justice. And it's a pretty good study. It has some really good stats in it. But unfortunately, they're very negative stats. I spoke to a woman tonight, actually Sweet's mom. She had been to a funeral today for a police officer.
That's right, yeah.
And she works at a church. She's retired. She volunteers. And she got emotional telling me about it, and she apologized. I said, are you kidding me? As a retired police officer, somebody in the community is telling me what they just did to help out, and it made her emotional. You know what? Those are the type of people you forget when you're out there on the street, because you don't always deal with nice people. Usually you deal with people that don't like you. You know, a prior administration, not to get political, but the prior administration, I'm talking about Obama, Biden, Eric Holder. What happened in Ferguson, Missouri with that officer, Mike Wilson, what happened to him should have never happened at all to anybody. They considered, hands up, don't shoot. It was all a farce. And since that day in Ferguson, Missouri, all right, 4 years ago, since that day, the rate of police officers being shot on duty has gone up 85%.
Well, because they're afraid to draw their guns. They're afraid to. Listen. You pull your gun out, you got to answer to it. I mean, I was never a cop, but just hearing some of the stories from you and nowadays, a lot of cops that I know, these guys, their hands are almost tied when they're doing this job. You know.
Right. Well, you say you were never a cop, but I'll say this, and not to blow smoke up your ass, but I've been working with you now for 8 years, and we've done a lot of good things, and we've helped a lot of people. And you probably know more about law enforcement, firemen, EMS, and recovery than most people ever will. And you sacrifice your time, your effort to do stuff. I mean, here we are. It's 9:45.
Yeah.
And it's a long day. Yeah. You flew up here to be here. So
I was out in Boise, Idaho today.
Right.
I was at a first responders conference, and there was it was an excellent conference. If you guys want to attend a good conference out there, it's called the First Responders Conference. Look it up on Facebook or in the on the internet or whatever. But I just want to say hello to Jackie and Sean. They put a wonderful, wonderful conference together. But one woman stood out. She had to be in her early 30s, and I think her husband died a year ago. He shot himself on duty. Killed himself, and she told the story from beginning to end. I was sitting there crying. The whole room was crying. It was just sad. It was so sad. And hopefully maybe one day we'll have her on the show to get that story out, because the officers don't need to die. You guys, there's help out there. There's things that you guys can do, and hopefully this show will be a conduit for somebody listening. Maybe they'll say, yeah, I heard we can do something. You don't have to go down that dark hole. You just don't.
Certainly. I belong to an organization called VAV, Veterans Assistant Veterans, and what we do is we raise money, and we take that money and we find veterans that are homeless, that need appliances, that need mental health counseling, that aren't getting the proper counseling. They're waiting in line at these VA hospitals to see a doctor who's probably inundated, overloaded, not able to give them the proper care. And the monies we raise, we give to these veterans, and we help veterans. And I've seen many police officers and family members. I've been to funerals. I can't tell you how many where police officers have taken their own lives. And you see their children in the line at the wakes, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that she said that about the kids. That's what really got everybody. They had 2 young kids, and just the whole room was just you just don't realize what that would do. You think you're going to be. I know this is not a show about suicide, but this is just a commonplace. Unfortunately, we were just talking, the funeral today. She said you think when you're going to put that gun to your head or you're going to take your life, that it's going to be better without you. It's not. This poor woman lost her home. She lost everything. Those paychecks don't come in anymore.
That's right.
She was a stay-at-home mom.
That's
Those paychecks don't come in anymore, and you lose everything. You lose everything, So it's not better without you guys. We need you here. Get the help. And there's suicide numbers. We can get those numbers for you guys. Give us a call. You don't have to live that life, and you're not the only one.
Right. And speaking of phone numbers, I have an office in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. Therapy Services, 978-459-4884. And that's my office number. And I guarantee you, 24/7, you call that number, I will get back to you. You're seeking help. I'm the guy that will help you. Ed's the guy that will help you.
Yeah,
We're not here to make a killing. We're not going to make any money doing this, but we're certainly going to help some
We're
people.
going to save lives, hopefully.
Yeah, if we save one life, Ed, we've done a good job. But I guarantee you, we're going to save more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can get a hold of Genesis House. I mean, we are a substance abuse treatment center, but we will direct you to the mental health or whatever information you need. And Sweets, you know all this stuff too. I'm sure you've worked with some police officers in the past, or at least first responders in the past, and you know that mental health is not
the collateral damage. Within the family, the community, it's terrible.
It is. It really wreaks havoc. But and some of you've probably listened to us before on another podcast,
Friends in Recovery,
Friends in
podcast.
Recovery, the Addiction
.com.
Podcast.
That's right.
.com. That's it.
The Addiction Podcast.
That's it.
And we've been doing that for 14 months.
Yeah.
And I think we've reached a lot of people, and it's a real pleasure to have somebody email you or call you looking for help. And we've been fortunate enough to have a place like Genesis House. I've used them as an employee assistance professional. I've sent at least a dozen officers I know, good friends of mine, and firefighters and civilians.
And personal people.
And personal friends, right? And family members. And I'll say I got nothing but great results.
Yeah.
And, the thing I like about Genesis House, it's not a conglomerate. It's not a, there's 7 of them. There's one.
Yeah.
And they have so many beds, and they have a great staff. Melissa, Skylar, Taylor, the rest of the names.
Steven and Phil are our guy who does all the first responders.
Right.
Matter of fact, he'll be on one of the upcoming shows. We're going to interview him, and he's going to tell us what he does down there for us in one of the upcoming shows. So,
well, I'm certainly looking forward going into the cooler months and being able to help people and be part of this podcast on a weekly basis. And this was a great idea you come up with it.
Yeah. And then we're fortunate to kind of figure this out and take it to the next level. And we expanded from the addiction podcast to this podcast, and Mike and I talk all the time, and we know that the need is out there for these for you guys for the first responders.
And we have a producer extraordinaire. Sweets is definitely somebody who not only can set this up and have a podcast and a broadcast, but also he knows what it's about. He knows what this is about. And look what we're doing right now. We set this up in 15 minutes.
Yeah. And Sweets, you do interventions. You can tell us a little bit about interventions, what that could do for the first responders, how that can get them out of,
Absolutely. I mean, in a future show, we can talk all about it. I know interventions are a tough thing for a lot of families to consider, but at the end of the day, you're stepping in to try to unstuck somebody or rescue somebody that, may be working at a job where they don't feel like there's a way out, they don't feel like they can take the time off, or they don't feel like they can step away from their job. But with the protection of FMLA and the support of their colleagues and their family, it is safe to take that time, and it is a good idea to take care of yourself so you can take care of the people you're out there protecting and the lives you're trying to save.
Absolutely. Right. And we're not just talking about substance abuse. You'll do mental health
absolutely
interventions and everything. Because when you think of interventions, what do you think of? You think of substance abuse.
Of course.
But there are mental health interventions, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you know somebody that's having a problem and they might be thinking about taking their own lives, or there's signs out there.
I mean, there's just stress interventions. I mean, you think of the stress of a first responder. I mean, even if you're not using substances, if you're not taking care of yourself, then it's hard for you to do your job, and sometimes it takes the love and support of family and colleagues to step in and say, hey, listen, man, burnout's a real thing. Mm-hmm. It's time to take a break.
Certainly.
go get realigned, check on your mental health, deal with your trauma so you can come back and be the best person you can be.
Well, and Mike, you said it earlier, you don't deal with the best of people. First responders don't, especially cops, don't deal with the best of people. Corrections officers definitely don't deal with the best of people. Exactly. So there is stress in it, and sometimes I couldn't imagine just like how many times did you not want to go to work because the same old bullshit was going to happen.
That's right. And they say depression is the common cold of people in law enforcement, and being depressed, having suicide ideation, thoughts of suicide. It's a normal occurrence, believe me. If you're out there and if you're thinking about hurting yourself or killing yourself, just think of this. People that love you, your children, your sisters, your brothers, your moms, your dads, your significant others, male, female, it doesn't matter. They are 35% more apt to do the exact same thing if you pull that trigger, if you hang yourself, if you kill yourself, because they're going to think about your actions, and they're going to think, well, maybe if they have suicide ideation, they might think, well, this is my destiny. I have to do this.
Yeah. Or I'm no good anymore, or I don't, I'm not a productive member of society. Listen, every one of you first responders out there, no matter what it is, you guys, I couldn't do it. I know I couldn't run into a fire. I couldn't strap a gun on and go take down the bad guys. You were talking earlier that Sweets is a big guy, and Mike said there's times that I would have to go in by myself and deal with a guy just as big or bigger than Sweets,
Right.
and you know you would have to handle the situation by yourself. You ain't a big guy,
No,
but
I'm not.
but you know you have to do that. I could not do that. If Sweets came over here right now and kind of attacked me, I have to put you in front of me, okay?
Well, you know, the thing is,
Which he wouldn't, because he's
I
a
would
great
not do
guy.
that. I would not
know.
do that at-
He'd come over here and give me a kiss on the cheek, I think.
you learn to be able to speak to people, you know, with mental health issues and concerns or violence, you know, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You do have tools. You have nowadays they have stun guns. That we have pepper spray. We have, you know, collapsible clubs. You know, you don't want to use that. Nobody wants to club somebody or pepper spray them or stun gun them, or, you know, inevitably you don't ever want to shoot anybody. But this is what happens. You have a split second to make a decision. You might have gone to a car where there was a horrific accident, and the carnage of that accident you bring with you forever. You might have gone to a suicide, a young couple. I can remember vividly 40 years ago, a young couple committed suicide together, like a Romeo and Juliet couple. And I can still tell you what that car smelled like, what the car looked like, what they had in the back seat, the clothes they had on. It just never went away. And, you know, these are the things that a lot of people wrestle with. And then you get veterans that have seen the real carnage where people are blown to bits,
Yep.
and their colleagues and coworkers are laying next to them in pieces, literally sometimes. And, you know, they got to come back and try to act like everything's fine, and it's not. And it's good to talk to professionals. I work with 4 incredible women in my office, and I'm telling you, they are all gifted in everything they do, and I've learned so much from them.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are some good professionals. And you know what? We all need to talk to somebody sometime in our lives. I don't care whether you're a fireman, a police officer, a correctional officer, an EMS worker. You can be a nurse. You can be a dental hygienist.
The 911 operators at this conference, I had to walk out because this is the second conference I attended, and the first responders conferences are excellent. But when that 911 dispatcher came on, there was 2 girls up there, and just listening to these calls. I mean, think about it. They're on a phone talking to somebody, either listening to getting killed, beat, or whatever it was, and they have no power to do anything, you know. So we can't forget those dispatchers too.
Absolutely.
They're, you know, and I'm sure,
Absolutely.
you know, you knew some probably dispatchers that, you know, have probably heard some
Sure.
some shit too, you know.
So when I got out of the Army, when I went to work at the police station, I was a dispatcher. And, you know, you are helpless. And they are so well trained now. They deliver children over the phone. They quell disturbances. They give people the right information. House breaks in progress. People in your house stealing your belongings. You're petrified. You're under the bed. You're in a closet. You got a dispatcher who's on the phone trying to get you help. They stay calm, collective. They get the pertinent information, the right address, and everything else. And they really ought to be applauded, because that's a tough job too.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Ed.
Yeah, and we can't forget all them, and I'm sure we're leaving some people. Listen, even the nurses in the emergency room, they're first responders too, because these people, when the EMSs are bringing them into the emergency room,
Sure.
you know, we just heard a couple helicopters a little bit earlier today, and I'm guessing it was a few because they went on for a while, and you know, those nurses are right there. They're first responders too. So we even encourage the nurses and the doctors that are stitching these people or trying to get these people just to stay alive, take another breath until their body can, you know, get it going again. You know, so it goes all the way down the line. You know,
Well, you can contact us anytime, 978-459-4884. That's Mike the Podfather at Mike Miles at 978-459-4884.
And of course, Genesis House, you know, the scrolls across the screen. We had it scrolling across the screen, right? And the 800 number is always in there too. 800-737-0933. Pick the phone up. It doesn't matter if you know, whatever you're having. If you're having a problem with gambling, whatever it is, call us. You know, that's what this show is about. That's what we're looking for. We're looking to help whatever the problem might be, to fix it so you can move on. And you can move on. You just don't have to stay stuck where you are. I always hear, you know, stay stuck. You don't have to. It's just something that you got to work through, and there are professionals that can definitely work through that. But I think we're going to take a break here, and I think when we get back, we'll talk a little bit about what you've done in the past and what I've done, just to introduce ourselves a little bit,
Sounds good.
why we're here talking, and why they should listen.
Sounds good.
All right, guys, we'll be right back.
Since 1992, Genesis House has been helping real people heal from addiction on their private recovery campus in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. Their family-owned program is accredited by the Joint Commission and offers detox and dual diagnosis treatment in a comfortable and confidential setting. The First Responder Recovery Program at Genesis House is led by a doctorate-level therapist with direct professional experience as a first responder himself. Treatment modalities focus on psychiatric care, relapse prevention, stress management, and trauma-informed care for PTSD. Learn why their individualized approach makes a difference for first responders. Call Genesis House today at 1-800-737-0933 to speak with someone who understands. Visit them on the web at www.genesishouse.net. It's time to start your journey to a long and successful recovery.
Hey, welcome back, Friends in Recovery. Answering the call. I'm Mike, the Podfather.
And I'm Jersey Ed. I guess that's me.
That is you.
And we have Sweets as he's our producer and producer extraordinaire. Is that what she's?
That's what I say.
I'll take that label.
That's right. It's a great label.
And can I add this in a little bit? We are via satellite, right?
Correct. Oh, yeah.
Good.
Coming at you live.
Well, I think before the break, we were going to talk about kind of what we do and kind of what brought us here. But answering the call is just the next best thing. I think that would just fall right into, our podcast series and kind of what you do, Mike, as far as a first responder.
Sure.
And, I know some of the audience knows who we are, but I think we should get to know you and myself a little bit, maybe just take a little bit of time and kind of introduce who you are, like what qualifies you to be here, Mike.
Yeah. I'm a clinical social worker who's had a private practice for 20 years, and I'm also a licensed alcohol drug counselor. I'm a 35-year veteran of the Lowell Police Department, Lowell, Massachusetts. I spent 35 years as a police officer, 28 on patrol, 4 to 12 shift in a cruiser, and 8 years as the employee assistance professional. Prior to that, I was a correctional officer for 14 months. I worked the tiers, and prior to that, I spent 3 years in the United States Army. I was a military police officer, and I spent some time over in Germany and stateside, and I don't know, most of my life I've been involved in law enforcement. I'm 65 years old now. I retired 4 years ago from the police department. I'm very fortunate. I went back in my 40s and got my degree to do what I do with clinical social work. I got a master's in social work and human behavior, and I'm also a licensed alcohol drug counselor in 2 states, Massachusetts and New Hampshire. My hometown is so close to New Hampshire, I figured that would be a good idea. That's about it. I help a lot of people. I have a variety of clients. I also have I guess it would be a contract with the Archdiocese of Boston, and for the last 19 years I've worked with victims of sex abuse from the 70s and 80s, and they're mostly older men now, and so I've been very fortunate to see people from all walks of life, and it's what I do. And
yeah, well, you're a very people person. You like helping people, and that I think was the next kind of best thing for you to do once you either retired or as your secondary job.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, Mike, did you come from a line of first responders or police officers?
No. My dad worked at a plant called Raytheon in Lowell, and my mom did as well. And I grew up in a very empathetic home. My older brother, my brother David, who passed away in '94 at the age of 50, was what they called back in the day mentally retarded. Today they would say that he was special needs.
Mm-hmm.
And I have 3 sisters, and I don't know, I just grew up wanting to be what I became. I never dreamt of being a cop or anything, but once I got in the Army and was a police officer in the Army, I knew then that it's probably a career I was going to pursue.
Did you ever think you were going to be the Podfather someday?
I never thought I'd be the Podfather. Come on now, huh?
Well, you're excellent as the Podfather.
That label is something I really enjoy doing and giving back.
Yeah.
Tell us about you, Ed. You got quite a history yourself.
Well, yeah, I do. Well, what really brought me here was my addiction. That's why we're sitting here today. And we were just talking earlier about $1 million, and everybody's shaking their head. If somebody dropped $1 million in a wheelbarrow right here and said, "Would you drink once for that?" And the answer is absolutely not. I would not. I would not give this life up that I have right now for any amount of money. I would never want that life back. I would never want to be in those shoes, all those years ago, because I couldn't imagine where I would be today and what I would be doing,
Correct.
But my brush, well, I always had a brush with the law because I always had a pocket full of cocaine, and when you're driving around or you're in your house or you can be locked in a little room, you always think the cops are there watching watching you, But my quick little story about I always wanted to be a police officer. I always did. I just don't have the makeup to be to have become a police officer. But I think the next best thing was to help the first responders out, and I was blessed to take a job with Genesis House and be in that position to do this.
You certainly have, and you've lived up to that.
Yeah, and we have to. I give and I help and I do what I have to do. To help the first responders. And yeah, I do help civilians too, but I am drawn to the first responders, and in particular cops. I work quite well with the cops and corrections officers. But my quick little story was, and I told this on other podcasts, but for you guys who maybe didn't hear it, I was 18 years old. I couldn't wait to turn 18. I was full blown fucking drunk and a cocaine addict, and probably the day after I turned 18, I went down to the Chelmsford Fire Department, drunk, drove there because I'm thinking, hey, that's what firefighters do. They drink and put out fires and drink again after you put out a fire. So I ended up going to the fire department, drove there, sat and interviewed with two guys, and I started talking to them, and they interviewed me, and the one guy said, "Were you drinking?" And I said, yeah, I was. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a badge of honor, man. This guy was, I'm in. He goes, well, how you going to get home? I said, I'm just going to jump in the car. I only live 2 miles down the road. And he said, no, you're not. He goes, I said, oh, okay. Why? He goes, well, I'm a police officer. And so I didn't drive. Needless to say, I didn't drive home that day. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't be a firefighter because they don't fucking drink all the time, I guess. So that's my kind of quick little story about, at least doing something with the first responders. And then needless to say, I got sober at 28, but 10 years I had to take my hard knocks. Everybody said, what school did you go to? And I always said a school of hard knocks. And I got a lot of good education. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I should say, that I'm able to share my experience, strengths, and hopes and some of my bad stuff too, for people who are out there that might have,
Absolutely.
But again, this podcast is not just about substance abuse, and it's about a little bit of everything. But I just wanted to share my little bit of background of everything. I have my dad was actually in the Army, and he was in the reserves also. But I just had no desire at all to do any of that. The only desire I had was to figure out where I'm going to get my next drink and see where I can pick up my next 8 ball of cocaine. That was my life from probably about 18 to almost 28 years old. And in between there, I got sprinkled in 4 kids and a couple wives, and I was fortunate to meet my current wife, Stacy, and when her daughter was 2 years old, 2 or 3 years old, and now she's 18, and we raised a beautiful daughter together. So I really do have a great life now. And again, that pile of money would do nothing for me today if somebody said, as far as that goes. And Sweets, you want to give us a little bit about you? I mean, they got to learn everybody. So you're behind the camera, but we still need to hear about you. So,
well, I'm a person in recovery myself. About 42 years old right now. About to be 43 in a week, hopefully. If all goes well.
Young kids,
yeah,
right?
I know, right? And, I got my own experience with addiction, and, I've got my own experience with first responders. They responded to me quite a bit. And, it was tough for me. I think it was tough trying to find a way to get sober. I didn't have a career that I was trying to get back to or salvage. I was lost. And, so I look at a lot of the people that, doing interventions now, I'm stepping into people's lives that have, a career they're trying to salvage, as you're talking about first responders, nurses, doctors, police officers, firemen, these are people who have a career and their substance use, mental health or whatnot might be tied to that. And, for me, I was lost roaming around, and my addiction took me to a lot of dark places. And as you said, the School of Hard Knocks, I like to say I graduated,
Yep.
I made it out.
Yeah, we did.
And luckily, but It's definitely taught me a lot, and it's given me a lot of empathy. You know, you were talking earlier, Mike, about being able to connect with people, and I think, Ed, you were talking about Mike's ability to do so. The only reason I can do that is because of my personal experience. And, you know, you're talking about answering the call. Who better to answer the call than somebody that's been there?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, to be able to talk to a colleague or a peer, somebody that, you know, can say I understand and actually understands, it's huge. You know, and I'm grateful for guys like yourselves that are willing to answer that call for these folks.
Yeah.
Well, I got to say, it's really nice hearing you say that. I'm just getting to know Sweets, and you know, it's been a good experience. Well, Ed, I got to tell you, I'm looking forward to doing this podcast.
Absolutely.
I know we're going to help a lot of people. My phone number is 978-459-4884, and you can call me 24/7.
And Genesis House is 800-737-0933. And again, you know, this podcast is about everything and anything that a first responder goes through. And, you know, that's why we're here. And hopefully we'll have plenty of episodes to kind of get that. And again, if you have any topics, any subjects, you can email us at help@friendsandrecoverypodcast.com, or we have the beginning of the show, we have a Facebook page, you know, the Friends in Recovery. Just Google Friends in Recovery, and you'll get a hold of our Facebook page. Send us an email through there. Give us a call. Sweets, how can I get a hold of you? How can they get a hold of you, just in case they want to do an intervention or talk to you about that? You know,
So Baystate Recovery Services is our company. Our 800 number is 1-800-270-2302. Our website is baystaterecovery.com, and there's a lot of information there for families that have a loved one that might be struggling with this issue, and you know, they're looking for help or guidance on how to approach them or talk to them, because it's not always the individual reaching out. Sometimes it is the family. So if we can help, please let us know.
Absolutely.
Super.
And we always, did you want to explain one thing? You're always hearing us giving out phone numbers, because it's really important for you guys to connect with us, no matter what it is. And you're going to hear these phone numbers. We're going to have other phone numbers, suicide hotline numbers. We're going to have, you know, divorced, whatever it is. We're going to have these phone numbers available for you. And just listen to these phone numbers. And if you need it, call us. Or if you missed the number, replay the show or get back to it, and just get that number and reach out. Right? That's the best way to reach out.
We're going to have all these phone numbers in the details. So if you're watching this on YouTube, just click details below, more information. You'll find those phone numbers.
Okay.
If you're listening to this, it will be in the details of the podcast. So please click for more information, and it will be in there. There'll be clickable links and 800 numbers and all the contact numbers you need to reach, whether it's Jersey Ed or Mike, the Podfather. You'll be able to get a hold of those folks. And you can on Facebook, they'll be on the post as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Stay safe, everybody.
That concludes this episode of Answering the Call, the First Responder Podcast. Thanks to Genesis House for sponsoring the show and supporting our first responders who are struggling with addiction and mental health. Follow us on Facebook for past shows and updates. If you are interested in becoming a guest on the show, email us at help@friendsandrecoverypodcast.com.